What's up, y'all? Welcome to The Real and the Raw. I'm your host, Queen Renny. I hope this week was nothing but success for you. But if it wasn't, I am sending you all the love and positive vibes. Okay, so as y'all know, I'm sure y'all been watching. You better be watching. But we are continuing on with our series, A Walk to Surrender, our journeys to giving it to God. And I've just been sitting down with some of my closest friends and family and discussing their journeys, their surrender moments, and just sharing things that people don't always typically talk about. Who wants to highlight their hard times and their struggles and their grief and their trauma? I don't know many people who are willing to openly, publicly discuss those things. And so that's what we're talking about because we know that there are other folks going through things very similar or just like what we are experiencing. And how can they have hope or know that they can make it through their trials and tribulations if they don't see anyone who's doing it as well? So that's what we're here for. So I'm super excited today because I have someone that is very special to my heart. I've known her since she was 15 years old, and her story is truly very touching. It's very amazing, and it's God has been in the details. And so I want you all to help me welcome. Actually, can you guess who's coming to the couch today? Can you guess who's coming to the couch today? Help me welcome my girl, Yannah.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
To the couch, but even though you're not really on the couch,
Right.
y'all, we had technical difficulties. She was supposed to be coming to my house, so that I could cook for her and all that good stuff. But it's okay. We still gonna have our moment. But as y'all can see, she has her son with her, so don't mind. It's okay if we hear him, see him. Hi, Batman. Hi, Kingy. Hi. Hi, little boy. Okay, so Troyana, can you just kind of introduce yourself? Let us know, and you can say whatever you want, professionally, personally, whatever you want us to know about you.
Okay. King says hi.
Hi.
Hello. Hi. Are you done? Hello. Okay. Hi everyone. I am Troyana Davis. I'm 24 years old. I am from Deep East Oakland, born and raised. So who I am a mom. First and foremost, I'm a mom. I'm a daughter. I'm a granddaughter. I'm a sister. A little bit about me. So yeah, I'm 24 years old. I'm a mom. Currently I am in school to receive my AA in psychology. And then I plan on going back to a 4 year to receive my BA. And then only God knows from there what else happens after that. Um, I'm also a makeup artist. Yeah, just something to do on the side. Um, so yeah, that's kind of a little bit about me.
Hi. Y'all, you know, I am a family friendly. I have a lot of kids in my life, so I am more than fine with King. Y'all will probably see Toyana like on and off muting her mic, but it's okay. So what I want to talk about though first is sort of like how you grew up. Where you were raised, and kind of the family dynamics of your childhood.
Okay. So I was raised, so I lived in Sacramento with my dad's side of the family. She was a cousin, but Black people, we grew up calling our cousins aunts and
Right.
stuff like that. So she was a cousin, but I called her auntie. And then I stayed in Sacramento with her until I was about 7 years old. And then my grandmother had came and got me. So I knew I had a grandma. I knew I had siblings. I just didn't know like who they were. Um,
Right.
act like physically and stuff like that. I used to talk to them on the phone. And my auntie made sure that like I had a relationship with them. But it was one night when my grandma and her friend name is Velda. I remember this like it was yesterday. They came at nighttime and they picked me up And then I'm like, who's this lady? Like, I know talking to her on the phone, but I'm like, I never seen her. So I'm like, okay. So my grandmother came and got me when I was 7, because she had got guardianship of me and then my 4 other siblings. And then from there, I was raised in a home.
Hi.
In a home with my grandmother and my 4 other siblings. And I think for a while I was like, I had this like embarrassment of living with my grandma. I don't know where it came from. I don't know why, but I just seen everyone else like, oh, it's like it's back to school now. Everyone else is like, oh, I'm gonna call my mom, and I'm just like, oh, I'm gonna call my grandma. Like, it was just a little bit of shame and guilt and embarrassment, which I don't know where that stemmed from. I think I know, but we'll get into that
Well,
later.
I can understand that too, as someone who I was raised by my mom and my grandparents. And so there was multiple times where it was my grandmother or my grandfather. And then my dad wasn't, in my life growing up. And so I do understand, just like seeing that other people can call their dads or things like that. It kind of it unconsciously tells you like, oh, that I'm different. And
Yes,
so I know you're what, the third,
I'm the third. Yeah.
your mom's children, and so growing up with your grandmother, and what was that like as far as, and if kind of going into what your mom's struggles look like and why you all had to be raised by your grandmother.
hmm So the reason why my grandmother got guardianship of all of us was because my mom had like a really bad addiction with drugs.
Mhm.
Um, and it was like ongoing addiction for years. Like there was no point in time where it's like she stopped and then relapsed. It was like ongoing. Like it was never a time where it was like, okay, rehab and then I'm gonna try to get it together. So um we never lived with my mom. My older siblings did, but once my mom had me, it was just like automatically like my grandmother stepped in to take care of us. But yeah, so my mom grew up with her mom, but no father figure. And crazy thing is like my grandma was on drugs too.
Oh
So
wow.
yeah, it was like my grandmother, she's not from here, she's from Haiti. So she came out here when she was 16 and then had my uncle, had my mom, and then had my aunt. So just, back in those times in the 70s and the 60s and stuff like that, the drug era was so big. So yeah, so my mom, she was on drugs for a long period of time in her life. But I remember some periods where she would like take a break and there were periods of times where she would be in like mommy mode and like try to be a mom, but then
Yeah.
go back and like go back to doing the drugs. So it was very like I had my mom for like 2, 3 days and then it was like the drugs were back
Yeah.
in her possession and it was just like a whole totally different person. Um but I know like just living with my grandma and being raised by my grandma, it was hard because
Mhm.
like you're young and you want this and you want that. And my grandma, she didn't have a job. She had 5 of us trying to literally take care and navigate all 5 of us with like shoes, clothing, just things that we needed. And I'm being young and I want the latest Jordans that come out, the latest iPhone and all this and all that. And it was hard for her to give us these things, so I had to like get a job young and have my own stuff. Um, and it was never easy, especially being raised by your grandma. It's like you want your mom there and you want your parents in the household, but I was so blessed to be able to experience being with my grandma under the
Yeah.
same roof.
So I heard you mention that it was hard, or at that age, it was hard to understand. Your mom kind of going back and forth, and from kind of being able to be a mom to being back, on drugs for the time, and then also you mentioned your grandmother and just her not having the means to kind of allow you to keep up with the Joneses, right? And as teenagers, that's all we're thinking about. So at that time, and I don't know specifically, the age range, but at that time, can you remember what emotions or conversations you're having with yourself or with God at that time, just knowing what you're kind of seeing and the different parallels and balancing acts of it all?
Yeah, so to be fully transparent, at that time, I had no relationship with God, like
Mm.
whatsoever. I don't even remember ever like bringing up God when I was going through all that at such a young age, like had no idea. Um, but I know like emotionally, it was very, very hard for me. Just because the simple fact that like sometimes I would have like my friends over or just have like, company, and then they will be experiencing and seeing what I'm going through. And it being like my mom go through these, like I call them episodes of her just like, like being aggressive, being high. And I had to finally just break down to my friends and tell them like, you guys, my mom is on drugs.
Mm-hmm.
And we're all young, and my friends tried to support me emotionally and mentally as best as they could, but they didn't know what I was experiencing firsthand. They just knew secondhand from just being on the outside, looking in. Um, and I remember like me and my mom relationship being so rocky. Because at such a young age, I was very aware of my emotions. I was very aware of like what's going on. I was very aware of like what drug addiction was and
I had to grow
how
up.
exactly, and like how it was just changing her and my grandma's relationship. But one thing that I can say, my grandma heart posture never changed for my mom,
Yeah, yeah,
ever. And now that I'm 24 years old and I just think and I just sit back and I look at that, I'm like, wow. Like, no matter what she did to you, no matter how she made you feel, your heart never changed for her. And I inspire to be like that with everything that I touch in life, everything that I go through. I was very aware of my emotions though, but me and my mom had a really rocky relationship. And I remember I felt like I was my mom, like not worst child, but I was the child that like I told on my mom a lot. Like when my grandma like, Granny, I see mom doing this and and my grandma would like tell her like, hey, Troyana told me, and that
right.
made me and my mom relationship li- literally hell, because my mom was like, you can't come around me if you're gonna be telling your grandma on me. But I'm like, all I knew was I was telling on her because I wanted her to be better. I thought by maybe me saying something and speaking up, she was going to get the proper help that she need. But
Yeah.
being like limited to resources and just growing up in a black community, black neighborhoods, there was nothing that we could all really do for her.
I appreciate the fact that you were honest about during that time you weren't having conversation with God. And I don't know if the faith was even there, the belief was even there at this time because you're a child also. But there's a lot of folks who get higher than thou because now they're believers and they want to act like they never seen a moment where they weren't trusting and believing in God. And I think people need to hear that where you were, and obviously we'll get to where you are now, has been by the grace of God. And so, what that moment was for you, obviously we'll get there, and how you surrendered and started to, trust and believe in God. But something that I want to go back to though is that you mentioned because of the circumstances being raised by your grandmother and you wanting to live the teenage life, go to football games, get your hair done, go to prom, you had to get a job. So what was that like? And where did you start out working, and how that led you to us meeting?
Yeah, so I had an uncle who worked at East Oakland Youth Development Center out here in Oakland. And he was trying to help me get my first job at like 13. But I remember going to like one info session and then I never returned after that. And I was like, it was because I was like so shy. I was just like, it's so many people in here. It was just a lot going on. And then 2 years later, I was like, okay, I'm gonna do this. I got this. So I was 15 years old when I landed my first internship at LIDC. And I remember being in the gym, and I can't remember by name, but they were like, okay, you guys are going to break out into groups and go meet with your coaches. And I'm like, okay. I always loved having a mentor growing up, just someone, you can talk to and stuff like that. But never landed a one that I feel like I can connect with on a personal level. So I went through a lot of mentors in like high school and in middle school because I'm like, no, you're just not for me. You just know when somebody is for you.
Yeah. Oh, yes, that's true.
Based on energy and just like how they gravitate and just talk to you. So I remember going over there, and it was you, Sharon, who was my coach. And we were just talking, and I remember you saying like, okay, I'm gonna meet with you guys individually. And we were on the deck, if I'm correct. I think we're on the deck.
Oh yeah.
I think so. I really can. I think I remember. And then
On the deck or downstairs in the office, but I think we started on the deck and then our conversation.
Yep. So, and it was just something like something in my heart and in my spirit. And I just feel like I could let my guard down and I can say what I'm going through because I didn't know you from a can of paint.
No,
I
yeah.
didn't notice. I didn't. I'm like, who is this girl? Like, but I think it was just the energy that made me feel like, okay, she's a safe person and you can talk to her. And mind you, since I've been going through this, I've never really had a person that I've talking to people, but I haven't had someone be consistent with me in my journey of going through everything that I'm going through. So I remember just venting to you and just telling you, like, I'm 15 years old. I'm battling this with my mom. I'm going through this with my grandma. And I need help. I feel like honestly, it was like a call for help. And you were there to like help support and guide me through everything. And then I remember you saying, okay, let's pray. That's the first thing you did was like, okay, let's pray. And I'm like, pray. And I told you before, I had no relationship with God. And I'm just like, okay, let's pray. All I know is to bow my head, close my eyes, and hold hands with somebody. And then, you know,
It's crazy because one, I didn't know at that time that you didn't have a strong relationship with God. And it was just what I've, been taught that when there's a moment, especially when one, you feel God calling you to pray over someone, then, I try to listen. But also when there's a moment to me, and I don't know how you feel, but I felt in that moment that was probably a surrender moment for you. Even though you were having the conversation with me, I felt like, and just tell me if you agree that in knowing you now, that probably was the first moment.
Yes.
Verbalized what you were going through.
Absolutely, yes.
Recognized it and was like, I need to get this off of me. That is a surrender moment. I don't know what you were feeling in that moment, if it felt like that or what.
Absolutely. I felt like it was a surrender moment, but I couldn't recognize it because I didn't know what a surrender moment looked like back then. But now looking at it, that was a surrender moment for me because I was giving everything that I had on my chest and on my mind to someone who was a firm believer in God, who could teach me about surrender, heart posture, giving my life to God, and trusting on God anytime that I'm feeling like I can't get through it. Because I've had plenty of times and plenty of moments where I feel like I can't get through this. I don't know how I'm going to get through this. I'm 15 years old. Who do I talk to? Who do I call on? Like, what do I do?
And I know at that time you weren't talking to your mom at this time, and your relationship with your grandmother was kind of strained because, like we said, you're trying to be a teenager. She's trying to make sure everybody is fed and keeps this roof over their home, and so their head. So there isn't always time for extra. And at that time, that was difficult for you to understand. But also, I think what is something always drew nothing but God now that I know, but there was always a draw towards you as well, to be like, let me make sure she's okay, and knowing that, okay, you just gave me your hardest, darkest secret, hard, biggest struggle. How am I going to make sure that you didn't do that in vain? And to me, it was nothing but God allowing both of us to be at the center, to be used together. And I think, and I don't know how soon after for you your kind of walk or journey with God began after that, but I just know you went from being quiet, smiled with your hand out, barely talked
Right.
out of to Deja, which is her best friend, or me,
Yeah.
to now you sit on a podcast, you have your own makeup, business, you're a mother, you're, all of these different things that the 15-year-old you, would you have seen yourself being who you are now
Ooh,
based on where you were at that time, right? Without, say, you don't have that intervention of prayer and God.
absolutely not. Like, I honestly don't think I could even I no, honestly no, because God is so faithful. God is so amazing. God is so powerful, and I had to realize that once I've gotten older and I built my own personal relationship with Him, and I took the time to understand God and to pray to God and to know who God is and what He can do. But 15-year-old me, I thought honestly like I'm not gonna make it. I thought I was gonna fall short to the system. I thought it was just not going to get better for me. And just being a kid and having to grow up quick,
Yeah.
that's when I knew like, girl, you gotta find some outlets to help you get through this, because if you just never know what can happen to you. And I knew I never wanted to be like who I was around. I wanted to be better. And I wanted to set examples for my little sisters.
Yeah.
Um, so once I've gotten older, I had to literally, like I said, build my own relationship with God. Because at 15, 13, 14, 15, I was lost. Like, thought about suicide. Um, it was bad. It was
Yeah.
bad. Growing up in a Black home, we don't talk about stuff like that at all.
You know what? I want to highlight the fact that for anybody who's listening that is currently in a similar situation or is coming from a similar situation, Triana is someone who could have easily been lost in the foster system, right? Who could have gone and went on the same path of drugs as her mother, right? But thankfully God placed someone in her life, her grandmother, that was going to love and protect her and follow in his will. Because I think, to me, the biggest thing that I hear God telling me right now is that your circumstances were on purpose. Because say you don't have the mom that you had, say you had a grandmother who was able to provide for you financially, and you never had to come work at the center, you may never have found God. That is what that journey was about. He had to take you through the desert and such trials and tribulations so that he could bring you to himself.
Mhm.
And I don't know that if you don't walk the walk that you've had to walk, if you even be where you are today to be the success that you are, the mother that you are, the friend, the sister, the cousin, the college graduate, first generation, all of that, business owner. Who knows that if you don't walk the path that seemed like you said, like you would never get out of, if you would even have the glory that you have today. And so that was on purpose. And I think it also leads me to talk about what it was like for you, knowing where you've come from, the relationship that you had with your mother. And then you call me on FaceTime and you tell me the biggest, I think the biggest blessing of your life. What was that like, knowing your relationship with your mother going into motherhood?
Whew. Wow. Honestly, I've always, anybody could tell you, I always say, oh, I'm not having kids. And I knew what that stemmed from. It just stemmed from me having not a good relationship with my mom. I always said, like, I'm not having kids. What do I need to have kids for? But I remember finding out that I was pregnant. Yes. Yeah, I remember me saying, like, I'm not having kids. I don't want kids. And I knew that came from me having like not a good relationship with my mom.
Yeah.
And I was afraid, like, am I going to be a bad mom because of how my mom was with her kids, or like just having all these emotions and thoughts going through my head. But then I remember praying and I was just like, God, give me the heart posture of like being a good mom. Like, I don't know, it don't come with a manual, so you just don't know what you're getting into. But I remember calling you and I'm like, Sharon, pregnant. And then you instantly was like, okay, we're going to go get you some prenatal pills. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. And I'm like, she's not going to ask me, like, am I going to keep it or am I? And I'm like, okay, we're going to go get prenatal pills and we're going to do this. And I'm going to schedule my first doctor's appointment and just, it was just like, now it's just, we're going through it together. And I think just like having you, like being the first person that I called and just like not second guessing it, I'm like, that didn't make me second guess any decision that I made moving forward. And I'm like, okay, I can do this, you know, but I'm not gonna sit here and lie and say like I wasn't scared, because I was, because I didn't know how to, you know, be a mom.
And now look at you.
But you know, just a lot of people, they have that mom and daughter relationship, and then the mom is there to be there every step of the way and just teach them and be there at the hospital and do this and do that. And it was sad that I didn't have that, but I was also grateful for what I did have and who was there for me. So I think that really helped me get through my pregnancy and helped me get through my birth and having my baby.
And
baby boy.
It's crazy to hear you say that too, because I didn't second guess. And God works. A lot of say God works in mysterious ways, but I have changed it to God works in the best way, because I had no idea that phone call and my heart posture was going to be so affirming for you and be like, okay, I'm doing this. Because I remember you called me and you were crying, and I'm thinking, I immediately said, what's wrong? What's wrong? What's wrong? What's going on? And I'm thinking the worst. And you're like, I'm pregnant. And I said, oh, don't you ever call me crying like that for such good news. I was so excited because yes, I knew you were young. I knew, that King's father is young, but I had faith in the both of you. And I think in that moment, it was like God was letting me in on the plans that he had for you. And it was just like, oh yes, like this is for a reason. Knowing what you've had to go through to now have a chance to do it differently, and it will heal you in raising King. It's healing for you. And so I was just like, yes, whatever you need. And I always joke, and to me it's not a joke because it is the circumstance. I always say like, oh yeah, that's my grandson. Y'all have, if y'all know me and you're watching this podcast, you know that I have a grandson, and that is King. And the reason being was because I knew Troyana didn't have her mom to just be able to call and be the grandmother that ran over there, right? I also knew that her grandmother is getting older and just has other, Troyana has two siblings under her that her grandmother still had to raise. And so I was just like, let me step up and be kind of the person that's bridging that gap. But I also felt honored to be able to say, like, like that's my grandson. But I also felt, and I've never told you this before, but I also felt more connected to your mom. Wow. In saying that. And then I'll touch on, what we're going to go there afterwards, but then knowing kind of what it ended up being with her, I felt honored to be like, no, I got your girl, I got your grandson. But it's just amazing to hear how God works to even have you call me, in that moment. Out of all the folks you could have called, and for me to not, some people would have received that phone call in all honesty and been like, ooh, I don't know how you going this and how you going that. And
I had a few.
Yes. that, like you said, if I'm glad you didn't hear that first, because that could have discouraged you from stepping up and being the woman that God clearly wanted you to be and being in that.
Exactly.
So, what was that? Was that a surrender moment for you, or what conversation were you having with God in that moment, knowing that, okay, I'm now pregnant, I don't know what's to come from this?
The conversation, like I said, I remember just instantly when I found her, I'm like, God, whatever you have for me, I'm accepting it. Whatever is not for me, I'm
And,
accepting that too.
and
But on this journey, please just allow me to have a safe, healthy pregnancy and allow it to be smoothly, because a lot of people around me, I've seen and witnessed a lot of like children, kids that are close to me growing up with no dads,
yeah,
no support, everything. So I was just asking God, like, to give me everything that you want for me and my
and
baby. Like, just give it to us, because I trust you. I love you. And whatever that looks like, I'm here to do the work and to walk by faith and not by sight. And my pregnancy, I've had, I went through a lot
yeah,
during my pregnancy. And at a point in time, I was just asking God, like, why
mhm,
you do that to me? Like, I lost my auntie.
yeah,
We were very, very, very close. I lost my auntie when I was about, I think, 5 months pregnant. Um,
yeah,
and that was the hardest thing that I've ever went through when I was pregnant. I'm like, God, I didn't ask you for this. I asked you to give me everything that I needed during this pregnancy. And then I had to think about it, like, God does things for a reason.
yeah,
He does things for a reason. And maybe you needed this. This is something that a lot of people look at like, what do you mean you need to lose someone? And it was just like,
yeah,
I needed to lose my aunt to have a closer relationship to God. And since then, I have never questioned God about
yeah,
anything that happened, whether it's traumatic, whether it's small, whether it's big. I was just like, thank you, God, because for one, my auntie is no longer suffering.
right,
For two, she has a daughter who loves my son, and their relationship is so good how she told me it was going to be. And I'm just like so grateful and thankful for that. So,
yeah. No, I I everything that you said, I'm like snapping because it is true, and I think you touched on it, and what we've been talking about in our Bible study is our heart posture, and changing our heart posture and our mindset from why me to thank you, God, for thinking so highly of me, because God don't use everybody. And when he's having you go through these different trials and tribulations, that is him using you, not just for your benefit, but for someone else's as well. And I remember the first day you sat down and you told me your story, the very first thing I think I said back to you is, you were going through this. And when you tell this story, you're going to save someone else. And that has been, we could sit and we could say why me, and we can get depressed and we can be angry at God, but when we change our mindset and our heart posture to, ooh, you love me so deeply that you're going to use me to bring others to you, that is the greatest honor to me in life ever. And it's also why I was so adamant on bringing my podcast back and letting this series be what it was.
mm,
There are so many other people who are walking on these journeys, feeling alone and asking why me. And I'm like, nah, bro, change that, because God could have easily skipped over you and let you just live the best life ever, and nobody would have ever been saved because of you. The great mercy would never shine over you, all of those things. And so it's been dope to see your heart posture and your mindset change as well, just as a witness. And I think something that you mentioned is you went through your hardest struggle during your pregnancy and losing your aunt. And then not too long after having your son, you lost your mom. What was that moment like? Did you go to God immediately? Was there, a separation, or what were you experiencing when you, I think, either got that phone call or showed up? Yeah.
mm. So I didn't go to God immediately. I think it was a sense of like in denial. Because I'm like, no, maybe, like maybe it was a mistake. Maybe because I'm like, I just see my mom 2 days, 3 days before this happened, and she was fine. So I'm like, no, this is a mistake. But I'm a go, like, you get the like, oh, your mom is here, and I'm like, let me go see. So when I arrived, I was like, okay. So I instantly went into prayer. I'm like, God, I don't know what it is that you're doing, what it is that you're trying to show me, but I trust you because, like I said, the first incident with my auntie, I asked God, like, why? Why are you doing this? But when it happened to my mom, I was just like, God, I trust you. And even though you're putting me through this and you took my mom away, I still love you and I still trust what you have for me. And it's so hard. Anybody would tell you it's so hard to still keep and maintain and tell God you love him and you trust him when you just lost, your parent. But I'm just knowing what my mom was going through before this happened and knowing what we were going through before this happened, I was just like, she's not suffering anymore. Um, my grandmother, she has to grieve, but she don't have to worry about her child and her whereabouts and is she okay and is she this and is she that. So I was just like, thank you, God, I trust you. But it was so hard trying to get my siblings to have the same heart posture because they was looking at me like, what do you mean? Like, what do you mean thank God and you trust God and he just took away our mom? And I'm like, do y'all not know that God does things for a reason? Like, don't look at it as like this is the worst thing you're going through and he took mom away. Think of it in a different light. Like, why did he take her away from me? Why? Because she was suffering. Like, my mom was suffering. And she would tell us like a lot of things when, she was like high, but thinking about it now, it was the truth. Like, was sexually assaulted as a young child. She was in abusive relationships. She, was having a lot of children with a lot of different men and had low self-esteem and didn't have the love and support that she needed. And I was just like, wow, you went through a lot. And I didn't look at like the why she chose drugs. I was just looking at the, well, you're on them and you're a bad mom, you're this and that. But I had to really sit and think like, Triana, did you ever think like why she turned to drugs? Because there's a reason why we do everything we do. And I remember having a conversation with my older sister and my mom, and my mom was like, y'all don't know a lot that I don't tell y'all, but I've been through a lot at such a young age, like being 7 years old, being, assaulted by a man. And then, like I said, growing up in a Black family, we don't talk about those issues. We just and keep going,
Or think that in some circumstances we think, oh, we just pray about it, but there's prayer and there's action and they go together in a lot of situations. And I think what warmed my heart, well, first of all, let me go back. I remember you calling me and just screaming like a scream that I just can't describe. And I remember going and I remember just being there, with y'all and praying over y'all, praying over your mom. And that was hard. Not only to see y'all go through it, but to have to experience too, because I would see her sometimes and we would have conversations sometimes. But just knowing that, like, I think what warmed my heart about it is knowing that you had forgiven her before she passed away and that she got to know King and King got to know her. And even though it was a short time frame, you had that healing moment, that surrender moment of, I'm not going to carry this burden. I'm not going to carry this anger, this judgment, this hurt towards her. You started to take a step back and, like you said, try to understand why things are the way they are with her. And I'm just thankful that God gave you the time to do that before you had to lose her. Because had you not had that, I don't know that, or you can speak to, had if you know, what do you think the difference is, or how? Well, let me back up. What are you grateful? And I people like grateful. She lost your mom. What could she be grateful? But what are you grateful to God about, and how He
Mhm.
played that out for you?
I think the most thing that I am grateful for was surrendering that relationship to God, forgiving her um a long time ago. And not, I didn't even tell my mom I forgive her. I just had a conversation with God and I was just like, God, I forgive her. Like, I understand. And that's all it was. I forgive her. And I know deep down in my heart, like, I was okay. I felt better. Like, nothing she did I was like, I was upset about, or I was angry at her about. And that's when I knew right then and there, I was like, you really forgave her. And God is doing the work, because, it's so easy to say, like, oh, I forgive you, and then continue to be mad at a person and continue to bring up the bad and the negative, and to keep talking about what you did to me and how you did this and how you did that. But I was like, I know deep down in my heart, I was like, wow, you really did that. And I didn't even know, like I said, what a surrender was, but I
Yeah,
thought that forgiveness and moving on with my life. But
yeah,
I honestly felt like if I didn't surrender that relationship and become at peace with myself, I would have been grieving in the most craziest way right now. But I
yeah,
was okay. Like, I grieved, but not how,
yeah,
everyone was grieved. I was okay. I was
yeah,
okay. I was okay. Still to this day, it's hard, but deep down in my heart, I am okay,
yeah,
because, she did have the opportunity to meet my son, and it's hard to have to raise him and to
mm,
just let him see memories and pictures and videos instead of him actually building his own relationship with his grandma.
yeah,
But deep down in my heart, I am happy that I was allowing her to be here and be in the same presence with me and my child, because before,
yeah.
if I didn't forgive that relationship, it would have been no,
They
like,
would have never met. Yeah, no, because you would have been jaded and
mm-hmm,
she wouldn't have understood.
mm-hmm,
And they would have never met. You would have never had that opportunity to heal, forgive her, and have in y'all's last moments together. Y'all were happy.
yeah,
Y'all were happy. I think you got her hair done
mm-hmm.
for her birthday or something like that.
I had, I think I had bought her some shoes.
Yeah.
It was like, it's so funny, because anytime, like, around my mom's birthday, I would just like cater to her. I would just make her happy, because I I didn't know who was doing that for her. I didn't need to know, but I
Yeah.
just know, like, I want to celebrate you. I want you to feel special, because it's
Yeah.
your day. You made it to another birthday, and I think birthdays are so special and important, um, especially like for me, because she will always say, like, my mom was so funny. She will always say, nobody got me nothing on my birthday. And she would like literally say that to all of us, and we'll look at her like, girl, what you get us on our birthday? Like, but that was our mom, and she was just like, well, I'm y'all mom. I don't gotta,
Yeah.
like, y'all my kids. Y'all supposed to. So I was just like, from here on out, I think I was like, yeah, I'm going to just make her feel special. Whether it's go to
Yeah.
the nail shop, get her feet done, or, take her to buy something nice for herself. I always wanted to do that, because I seen the smile that it put on
Yeah.
her face, and it lit her up, and it made her spirit feel better. And everything that she was going through, it didn't matter at the time,
Yeah.
her feeling good. And
Yeah.
seeing, like, her knowing, like, okay, my daughter cares about me,
Hmm.
versus like our past relationship. Like, so I think that was
Yeah,
one.
that's huge. And that's nothing but God working through you as well, because what you said in the beginning, you applied it to your grandmother. You said your grandmother's heart posture never changed towards your mom. But what I, from an outside witness looking in, you were always a good daughter to your mom as well. And I never saw your heart posture change towards her. You might have been frustrated. You might have not liked the way the relationship was and the circumstances, but you answered every time she called. you looked for her, and if you saw her, you would do those things for her. And so to me, you could have been jaded the entire time. You could have completely distanced yourself from her, which you wouldn't have been wrong for doing. But
Mhm.
you didn't. You always kept a door open, whether it was big or small. You kept a door open for her, and she knew that. And I think that's part of that peace that God allowed you to feel in her passing, is that you knew she loved you, even though she couldn't show it all the time. But she, I don't think, had a doubt that you loved her, and you were able to show it more times than not. And so I think that is something that, to highlight and for you to be proud of as well. And it brings me to, like, what type of conversations were you having with yourself and with God, and knowing that after coming through that trauma of losing your aunt and your mom so close together, that it helped you realize you had to set some boundaries?
Mhm. Um, yeah, so when setting boundaries is it's a tough battle because it's like you're battling your heart and your mind, and then it's like you have the outside people, and a lot of people don't know what it's like setting boundaries. So it's like when you set them for yourself, you sometimes you may lose friendships, sometimes you may lose, relationships with close family members. But I had to realize like I'm doing what's best for me and my mental health. And that's okay. Whatever that looks like, it's okay. But I think the biggest boundary that I set was like not allowing others to like tell me how to grieve and how to feel in the moment of me going through something so bad, because you got to think I just had a child, I was going through postpartum, I just
Right.
my mom, I was still grieving the loss of my aunt, and I was just like I'm angry. Like I'm not angry with God, but I felt like I was just angry because I'm like, why am I going through so much at the same time? And um I had to just allow myself to be by myself. And it didn't mean like, I didn't want friendships anymore. I didn't want this anymore. I was just like, you guys, I'm not the same. Like I had to tell my friends like I have to just be by myself for a minute. I still love you guys the same, but this is just my boundary that I'm setting. And please don't take it, any type of way. Then also being in a relationship with my child's father, it was like, how do I show up for him and my child, but also grieve and show up for myself? And it took a huge toll on our relationship because we're young. We don't
Yeah.
know how to navigate our emotions like a 30-year-old or a 35-year-old, like we're still babies,
Yeah.
literally raising a child. So
Well, raising a child, and then on top of, like you said, the trauma, the grief, and the I still need to work, I'm still in school, that just, it piles up.
it does. It really does. And as bad as I wanted to just stop and give up, I'm like, no, you have to keep going. You have to keep going. It's so easy to just give up, but it's like when you keep going, you're going to have a testimony. And look now, like I kept going, and I'm getting through it, and I had to utilize my resources too. Like,
Mhm.
you need help. Like, it's okay to go to therapy. Don't be ashamed. It's okay to talk to someone. It's okay to be angry, but take accountability when you're wrong, because there's a lot of times where I was voicing my frustration, but not in the right way. So, I think me just, yeah, having a lot of boundaries set and setting those boundaries for me and not other people, and not thinking about how other people are going to react to me setting those boundaries, because at the end of the day, it's like if you don't have boundaries set in your life, you're going to allow people to treat you and do you any type of way. And I couldn't allow that for myself, and now my child, because the boundaries that I have set for myself, it also is for my child to protect him too. So
Yes. And two, to make sure that you're not veering off from where God
exactly.
is. I know we've been talking about where it is so important to have like-minded friends, friends that you can call. They're going to tell you, no, you shouldn't have done that, or yes, you should have done that, or let's pray, let's take it to God. Friends that are going to be positive reinforcements for where you're trying to go and where God is trying to lead you to, versus if you don't have boundaries, you're open to any and everything, everybody, and what they bring in the energy, and that can lead you down a path that is like, there's a song by Madison Ryan that says, like, she's like, I found myself chasing after things that you didn't call for me, basically, something like that. And it was like your mind and circumstances will have you chasing after things that God didn't even want you to have. And now you off past and you're wearing yourself out chasing after something that is not even for you. And so then it's like you think you didn't reach your destination and you are nowhere close. So I think that that's important that that you mentioned as well. And then those boundaries help you grow closer to God too, because you don't have so many distractions and people pulling you and wearing you down from so many different angles and places. So as we kind of wrap up, because I think something that I've realized in doing this podcast so far is that our walk to surrender is literally a walk. It's not okay, I got this far and now I'm done. Because life is always going to bring something new. There's going to be another challenge, another trial, whatever. And so, where do you feel like you are right now on your journey and walk to surrender? And how are you feeling about, that circumstance right now?
Right now, it's so funny because I'm going through, I feel like battling what I want and need versus what God wants and need for me.
Oh, tell me.
And it's crazy because it's so easy to go with what you need and what you want versus what God needs and what God wants for you. But I was praying before we got on here and I was just like, God, I surrender it all to you. The depression, the anxiety, the relationships you don't want for me no more. But allow me to have a heart that looks like yours. Allow me to love what you love. Allow me to hate what you hate. And just allow my heart to just align with yours because I'm not perfect. Nobody is perfect. If we were perfect and had what we needed and what we wanted in life, who can we call on in the times of like distraught and needing someone? And I always say, like, God, there's no perfect relationship with God. You know, if there was, like I said, who would you call on? But I think for me, I'm surrendering a lot right now. Like I'm literally just asking God, like, God, if it's meant to be, work it out. If it's not meant to be, that's okay too. It hurts too when it's not meant to be, but it's much more better when God shows you like it's not meant to be. So you trust him, you trust on him, you trust him, and you just move forward with your life. But it's a lot that I'm surrendering to, and it feels good.
I think that's something we've been talking about too, is that you wanna chase after the gift giver and not the gift. And it's so easy to chase after the gift and the blessings and all the good that can come, but it's like when you're praying for alignment with God's will and are open to whatever God has for you, whether that's fits the bill that you wanted or not, I feel like you just have you're able to move through life with just a different vibe, a different peace, a different understanding, to where it's like you're not so bothered about every little thing, because you know that at the end of the day, what is for me will not miss me. And so I'm just moving with that purpose. Yeah, no,
I feel real. I feel good. It's still like you said, it's a walk. Like it don't stop. When you get what you need, it don't stop from there. Y'all always say, even in the good times, still praise me. And like you said, it's a long journey because life is just going to keep life. And I'm only 24. I got my whole life ahead of me to continue to build and to surrender. Like I can surrender right now, and God hears me and he's like, okay, I got you. But then something can happen tomorrow and it's like, I got to surrender again. And something happened next year and it's like, I got to surrender again. So it's like, it's an ongoing journey. It's an ongoing journey, but you have to want to put yourself in that journey and to walk that walk with him, because nobody can force you to have a relationship with God. You have to want that for yourself. And yeah, so
I think that that's important to touch on really quickly too. I think that there's a common misconception about when you're walking with Jesus, that it's just like this easy walk that you're just always confident and brisking along, do 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 do, and that's not always the case. Sometimes it's a strong, confident walk, and with
Yeah,
no
boom, something hit.
girl, then you like, oh, like your feet just dragging along, or he's carrying you along.
And then you know what that means? He's like, okay, you tired. Call on me. You
Amen.
need me. You need me. Like, hello, you need me. So yes.
Stop looking everywhere and come straight to me.
Mhm.
So lastly, what I want to ask you, actually, well, it's two questions, but it's really one. If you had the chance to talk to someone who was on a similar walk as you, or or just whatever you want people to take from your story, if they don't take nothing else, what do you want people to know from what God has done in your life?
Yes. Oh, I would tell her because I feel like I'm going to change someone young like me and someone who looks like me. So I would tell her, don't go to nobody else. Go to God first, girl. Because can't nobody help you through it but God. They can help you through it momentarily, but God can help you through it longevity. Like, make sure you have in your building a healthy relationship with God, because like I said, I don't think I looking at 15-year-old Triana and then looking at 24-year-old Triana, I think me not having God in that lifespan, I feel like I would have just went downhill.
Mhm.
But I think I would tell her, like, there's someone out here that's just like you, who's going through what you're going through, who's facing what you're facing, but it is okay. It's not the end of the world, because there's always light at the end of the tunnel, you know? Um, and I would just tell her to keep being you, but also don't fight this battle by yourself, because there's people who love and care about you and who wants to help you. And you know, it's easy to have a lot of pride and to be like, oh no, I can do this all by myself. But no, you need somebody, because everybody needs somebody. So yeah.
Whew. Yes, y'all, I told y'all that this was going to be probably one of my favorite episodes, and told y'all that her story is moving. She is anointed. Like, I truly, like I said, from the day that I first met her when she was 15 years old and we sat and she cried telling me her story. When I told her that you are what you're going through, when you ready to speak on it, you're going to bring others out of their storm, and I still wholeheartedly believe that you already have. There's youth leaders who, you're able to do that for now. And I say youth leaders, y'all, because at our job, that's what the teenagers are called, but basically teenagers. So what I want to do, and this is the first time that I've been able to do this, I forgot with everybody else, but these conversations can be heavy. And so I want to end it on like a fun, light note. So I'm going to do, it's like a this or that. So hot or cold?
Um, hot.
Um, day or night?
Day, because I can't see during the night, girl.
Breakfast or dinner?
I love dinner. Dinner.
And then the last one is your favorite color.
Um, pink.
Last one is if you could go anywhere in the world, where would
If I can go anywhere in the world, I would take my grandma back home to Haiti, so I
mm,
can see where I came from, so she can
yes.
see motherland, and I will go to Haiti. So yeah.
Oh, yes. Okay. All right, y'all. So make sure that y'all tune in and subscribe to this podcast at Queen Renny Barnes on YouTube. Make sure y'all run it up for this episode.
Yes.
I will drop her Instagram. I'll drop both of her Instagrams actually in the description, because she is a Bay Area makeup artist. So make sure you hit her up, look at her work, and support her. Black owned business, young mother, about to graduate college, just trying to stay on the path that God has for her. And so, Troyan, I just really thank you for coming on, being open to telling your story, like publicly, where lots of folks will be able to listen. I already know that you're going to touch someone else's heart. And so I just appreciate you. I know that, these are not easy conversations, but I'm also very proud of you and I've been blessed to be along this journey and walk to surrender with you. But like I said, y'all, make sure you tune into this podcast. We're going to end this out the way that we always do. So, in the words of my late great brother, Sean E. Washington II, close your eyes, take a deep breath, and reflect. Most of the time, things work out fine if you just relax your mind. Thank y'all for tuning in to this podcast. Thank y'all for going on this journey with me as we talked about our walks to surrender and giving it to God. This is the final episode of this series. I have just been so grateful for this opportunity to share my story, but also share the stories of those that I love. I hope that you all were able to gain something, learn something, grow with us, but also find hope and courage for your walk to surrender and your journey to giving things to God, because it is not for you to carry. And I'm just sending y'all all the positive vibes and love as you continue to move throughout 2024 and go into 2025 with a fresh, renewed mindset. Sending peace and love. Queen Renny out.